Good afternoon, everyone. It's just past 1 o'clock, and it is time for us to start our webinar, our second webinar on the SATI accreditation system. Welcome, everyone, to all of our attendees and to our three panelists. I will quickly just give out a few house rules about how we are going to approach this webinar. We want you to ask as many questions as you want, but you cannot ask your questions verbally. You will have to type in, if you're joining us via Zoom, you use the Q&A area at the bottom of Zoom, not the chat area. So you type your questions in the Q&A area. If you are joining us via Facebook, you can make comments below the live streamed video on Facebook and ask your questions or post your comments there. And we will put your questions and comments to the panel. I'm going to start right away because we don't have a lot of time available to just say a few words about the SATI accreditation system. My name is Eleanor Cornelius, and I'm currently the chairperson of the South African Translators Institute. Our accreditation system is about 30 years old. We are extremely proud of this system. We cannot claim that our system is flawless. Anyone who wants to would be able to poke holes in it if they really set their minds to it. But we continuously work to improve the system to the best of our ability. It is a very intricate system because we offer accreditation in a number of the branches of language practice, and we serve a large variety of language combinations. So you can understand just how intricate the system is. We have recently acquired state-of-the-art custom-built equipment for the interpreting exams, for our interpreting accreditation, which also makes it possible for us to cope with SASL, South African Sign Language Interpreting Accreditation, because you know that that is just another language, but it has a visual component to it. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our three panelists. The first is Professor Wannie Carstens, who is the chairperson of our very own accreditation committee. He is the author of no less than 2 books. Well, he's written many books. He's like a professional author of textbooks and so forth, but 2 books that are very relevant to accreditation. The one is called Text Editing. He co-authored with Chris van der Poel and John Liniger. And the other one is Text Reductie, which he co-authored with Chris van der Poel. So you can see that Wannie is very much, a legitimate and a very experienced chairperson of our accreditation committee. Secondly, we've got Dr. Erika du Preez, all the way from Jeffreys Bay. She is SATI's accreditation officer. So she really knows all the nitty-gritty about the logistics of the accreditation exams and so on. And she will be the one who can explain a lot of the practicalities that are attached to accreditation. Then lastly, we've got Johan Blaauw. He recently, Johan is really synonymous with SATI for many years. And we've recently honored him by giving him honorary membership status, simply because he has been so instrumental in the operations of not only SATI as an organization and as an institute, but also very instrumental in the accreditation system. So welcome to the three of you. Wannie, I'm going to start with you. How important is it, and what is the value of becoming accredited? Why bother? Why should language practitioners even consider to become accredited?
Eleanor, I wrote down some notes and I will send it to Erika and we can put it on a website of SATI. Maybe it's useful there for some people. So I'm going to read it what I wrote down. In an unregulated profession such as language practice, it's difficult to find reputable language practitioners. And if you are accredited, your client will be assured of a practitioner who is in good standing, and that's very important. It's also more likely that a discerning client looking for an accredited practitioner will themselves be reputable, something which is also not common. Secondly, many people with very basic qualifications consider themselves to be language practitioners, but they are not, and they produce work of very low quality. And this gives our profession a bad name. So those who are accredited are just more visible. This gives you official status in the language practice environment and improves your ability and chances to get good clients. That makes sense. Thirdly, accreditation status increases your self-confidence. You know you have gone through a rigorous process of training and getting applicable experience in the field. It's a process, it doesn't happen quickly. Fourth, the only way to actually test whether your work is on a good professional standard is to write the accreditation exam. Then you know your work is on par. Fifth, accreditation helps us to professionalize our profession. This is really, really important, especially our industry. So in this way, the sixth one I'm going to mention, in this way, we will be able to get rid of the fly-by-nights. You know, the people who say they are accredited, but they are a language practitioner and they are not. So they come into the field and they do bad work. They give us a bad name. So it's very important to professionalize. If you are accepted as a professional, then people are more able to use you. And then a seventh one is very, very important. In the future, practical effect may be given to the South African Language Practitioners Council. That's the Act 8 of 2014. Accreditation is a registration requirement of the Act. And one of the sections of the Act specifically provides for recognition of prior accreditation by professional bodies such as SATI. So should a council be established, your SATI accreditation will therefore be positioned, will have positioned you for a registration as a language practitioner in terms of the Act. And the last one, I want to please tell people, please note that we are aware that the current system we have is not perfect, like Eleanor said. But we know it's currently the best way to test your skills and ability and to give the people outside an idea of the quality of the work you're going to produce. So it's a system that's been honed over years where we are now with it. So we are always open to suggestions on how we can further improve in the future. I hope this gives you an idea of the importance of accreditation. It has to do with the quality of your work and the way you professionalize our industry. I hope it helps a lot, Eleanor.
Yes, Wannie, thank you very, very much. I think this is a very, very necessary introduction to our webinar. And the two things that I heard you say that are very important is, firstly, it's about quality. And secondly, it's about professionalizing our industry. You know, the mere fact that a person can speak two languages, that we always say, does not necessarily mean that they can deliver work of good quality simply because they can read, write, understand, and speak two languages. we are dealing here with a profession and we want to be taken seriously. Apart from the fact that it's all about quality and professionalization, it's also very important to protect the public from malpractices. So, Wannie, thank you very much for that introduction and for outlining the importance and the value of becoming accredited with SATI, especially in the absence of the South African Language Practitioners Council. We know that that act has been promulgated, it is in force, but that such a council does not exist at the moment. Well, for the past 6 years, due to monetary or financial or budgetary problems on the side of government. Let us now move over, Wannie, thank you, to Erika. Can you please unmute Erika so that we can get a sense of the nitty-gritties, all the practical things that people will want to know about accreditation. How does it work? You know, all those really niggly little things. So please, Erika, I see that people have already started asking questions. I'm making my list, so we will return to questions later on. And please do so, the people who are attending the webinar, please continue typing your questions. After the three panelists have spoken, we will start dealing with the questions, and a lot of detail will come out of the questions that you actually ask us. So Erika, please just give us a bit of, you know, a feel for how does it work?
Hello, everyone. I'm sure that after you've listened to Wannie and to Eleanor, you are very much convinced about the importance and the value to get accredited. As you know, SATI is here to help you to get that accreditation. And something important to remember is that accreditation is absolutely voluntary. But if you do take the step, that shows you that you are really committed to the industry. So I might perhaps will be repeating some stuff that Wannie already mentioned, but just bear with me. We've got at SATI, we've got the various accreditation exams available in general translation, sworn translation, editing, interpreting, and sign language. But today we're not going to discuss much about sworn translation exams, because I know in future there will be a dedicated webinar just touching on sworn translation. And I just want to emphasize that generally it's accepted that South Africa's, the SATI accreditation is really the benchmark of language practice in South Africa. Some quick facts about the exam process. You will find our application form on the SATI website. And once you set it in that you've been approved, then I will let you know. And between you and me, we will decide about the suitable date for your exam. We would like to accommodate you as far as possible, so you may write it anytime, 24/7, meaning even during weekends, during holidays. And then on that specific day, I will send you all this exam material well in advance. You need not stress about a sudden load shedding. I will send it to you in advance. You can download it. Of course, the actual exam will be protected by a password. And just before you start, I will send you your password to your cell phone. And then you've got 24 hours to do the exam at home on your own computer. But luckily, you won't be completely on your own, because I will also give you my cell phone number. And should a crisis arises, you're most welcome to phone me. Or if you are a little bit unsure about something, you may contact me. I would like to mention the languages that we have available and the language combinations. For editing, we only have Afrikaans and English available. For the others, we really have a good representation of all the official South African languages, as well as various international languages. You're most welcome to drop me an email if you would like to inquire about this, and you'll find my email address on the SATI website. Just something, general remarks on our standard when we do the accreditation exams. It's important to note that it is not for beginners. It is really challenging. Okay, you might ask why? It's because we are really a professional body. We're even internationally affiliated. So we test, on the day of your exam, we test your professional skills and whether you can meet certain standards. We're not busy to test your potential to become that. We guarantee, if we issue you with that holy grail, is that what I call the certificate, the accreditation certificate, we guarantee not only that you are accredited, but we also guarantee to all your future clients that you are competent and that you will be able to deliver excellent and perfect work first time. Something about the markers that we use accredited and expert people with many years of experience in the specific field that they mark. They are objective and they are consistent. And again, they actually would like you to pass, but of course they're not allowed to lower our standards because they feel sorry for you. Regarding the confidentiality, each exam it's marked by 2 markers. They will not know who you are and you will not know who they are. They work completely independently. Eventually, they both send me a report. I write the final report and that goes to the SATI website, SATI council, for final approval. Even there, you will be anonymous. So should the worst happen and you fail, it's not a big deal. You can do it again next year. It has happened and it will happen. Just something about our practice tests. We've got practice tests available, but it's not compulsory. It's actually for those people who feel a little bit unsure whether they already meet the standard and they just want to test the water first. So it differs from the exam where the practice test will only be 1 passage to edit or to translate, and then it will only be marked by 1 marker. And in the case of the practice test, you will get your marked script back with some valuable remarks and tips from the marker, which will of course enable you to prepare for the eventual exam. Eleanor, I think that's about enough from my side.
So much. Thank you very much, Erika. There are a lot of detailed questions coming in, you know, and it would be better for us to go to those questions when the time arrives and to work through them, because there you will have to give more information, you know. So let us now move on to Johan Blaauw. You will notice that Erika did not speak about our interpreting and SASL in accreditation exams. Johan is and has been very involved in taking our accreditation exams and dealing with them on a very practical level. So Johan, can you please talk to us and just explain to us, because what Erika now said is, you know, you receive for translation, you receive your exam via email, you do it on computer, and of course this cannot work for interpreting. So how does the interpreting, this simultaneous interpreting exam work, and how does the SASL exam work? Because if I'm not mistaken, we do not yet offer consecutive interpreting accreditation. So the 2 types of interpreting accreditation that we offer is simultaneous and SASL. Please, Johan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, it's important to realize that although we say we offer 2 accreditations, in other words, spoken language and South African Sign Language, whereas in actual fact, and Eleanor has mentioned that South African Sign Language is just another language, although we have different requirements in order to offer that and in order to record it so that it can be assessed. And obviously the double blind factor suffers a little bit in the in the video recordings and even with voice recordings. But let me start from the beginning. The application prescripts are exactly the same as for the other accreditation exams. And that is clearly available on the website, and you can ask questions about that should you have any other. Then we don't offer consecutive interpreting yet. It is challenging, and I will explain now when I talk about how we do the simultaneous interpreting currently, which is by means of recordings. Previously, we've done a couple of rounds where we actually had a live panel sitting in where the interpreting was taking place. Now, that was done for the first round of accreditation ever done, where it was a panel that assessed the other panelists taking turns, the one after the other, interpreting at a Free State Legislature meeting with their permission, obviously. That was possible. Another one was done at a municipality where interpreting took place, where the panel could attend. In each of those instances, we had about 5 or 6 people who were being accredited. Now, this panel assessment is ideal, but it is not possible for cost reasons. If you have single people working in all different environments, mostly freelancers, interpreting for their own clients, obviously a panel can't just go and sit in where a freelance is interpreting. So the panel thing had to be replaced with something that is practical and practicable, and that was then to do your recordings of the assessments. It works simply. We had a rather complex setup with loose pieces of equipment strung together. It was really, as the Americans say, jury-rigged, put together by all bits and pieces. And that is what Eleanor referred to. We got technical people in, and they designed for us a single unit with which we can do the accreditation, the recordings. It simplifies matters significantly, and we will probably be going the route of having a technician operate that, so that the person, which was usually me, who takes down the recordings or records the assessments, doesn't have to fiddle with all the equipment as well, because it is distracting to your participants, etc. So you will see just from what I'm saying that we work with a lot of introspection all the time, and we listen to questions, and we see if we can meet certain practical suggestions, or if we can't meet some impractical suggestions for improving the exam, but we open to improvement always. Perhaps just something that we need to look at is to quickly tell you on what parameters we assess, because those are important things to be aware of. We look at accuracy and coherence. We look at your mastery of your target language in terms of vocabulary and register. And then we look at the target language, grammar, idiomatic usage, purity, etc. And then we also look at interpreting technique. Now, for South African Sign Language interpreting, we have additional parameters. And if anybody wants these parameters, you are free to contact Erica. That's not a state secret. We will tell you on the basis of which you are being assessed. Those things are also mentioned in your general information and other information available on the SATI website. So if you want to know more, please send an email and we will send you any information that you need. What is important, and I think this is the concluding thought from my side, is that we have to realize that it's the legitimacy of the accreditation exam to a very large extent is based on the fact that this is a peer evaluation. It is experienced people in the field assessing other people wanting to become accredited. And that counts for a lot. We might not always think of it, but if you have the backing of your peers saying, yes, this person can perform in the field, can work as a language practitioner in the particular domain in which the person is accredited. That counts for a lot. I saw one of the people commented that it's not just a benchmark in South Africa, but it is becoming an international benchmark as well because of the good guidelines and the good system that is in place. So with that, thanks. We'll go to the questions.
Yeah. Johan, thank you very much. I actually want to get to the questions because this really brings out the detail that people want to know. I just want to make one comment that I don't think you mentioned, Johan, is we physically travel to where, you know, the people are who want to become accredited in interpreting. I'm talking about simultaneous and SASL. So we usually make a call twice a year where people can indicate where they are and whether they want to become accredited. And if we have enough people in a particular city, such as or in province, we will send Johan down to Cape Town. If we have enough takers there, we will send Johan to Bloemfontein, or we will send Johan to Johannesburg. But let us start taking some questions. Johan, thank you for all of that. I've got a question from Robin. Now, I just have to mention, there are loads of questions coming in. We will not be able to get through all of the questions in the time available, but we will do our utmost to answer questions on Facebook afterwards. And if your question does not get answered, can you please email it to the office? And I will personally make sure that you get your answers to your questions if we don't get to it today. Erika, we have Robin who wants to know a very basic question. Do you have to be a member of SATI to take the accreditation exam?
Yes, that is definitely one of the prerequisites. You should be a member, and you should be a member for 3 months already before you may apply.
Yeah. So you cannot just quickly become a member and next week write the accreditation exam. We've got that window period, and I think that's very important. Erika, again, I think a lot of the questions will be directed to you because they are very practical questions. People want to know, you know, the ins and outs. So what is the cost of the exam and the practice tests, you know, respectively? So the cost of the actual exam?
The actual exam is 1,160.
And the practice test?
460.
And Erika, the practice test is only available for certain, I mean, you can't do a practice test for interpreting, for instance. So
No,
can you...
it's the practice tests are only available for editing, sworn translation, and general translation. Good. And I should emphasize that the practice tests are not compulsory, except for the translation. So it's not compulsory, it's up to the applicant whether they want to do it.
But would you recommend the practice test, Erika?
I think so, because if you pass the test, it doesn't mean that you will pass the exam, but at least you will have a passage from a previous exam. So you will know more or less what it is like. Excellent. And so you can actually see the test as sort of a training, whereas at the exam, it's not a training. There, it's business, you know.
Yeah.
Eleanor, could I maybe add, the value of such a test is the fact that it gives you indication of the experience you have in the field. It takes a long time to get a necessary experience. So if you want, after you've had experience 2-3 years, and you want to see if you are able to do it, that's a good idea. Maybe the feedback will give you an idea, you're able to do it or not. Maybe wait another few years. But a very important thing is experience.
Yes, yes. Erika, another question for you. I'm sorry, you are in the hot seat. How long do you have to wait before you can redo the exam?
It depends on, you know, the markers mark the exams on major errors and minor errors. And depends on, if you fail, it depends on how many, that's now regarding the tests. It will depend on how much errors you made. In the case of the exams, you'll have to wait a year.
Okay, so is there a reason we're doing this, Erika?
It is because we really give the candidates a very good report with valuable feedback, so they can use that report to hone their skills in the period then, to to go to those things that they're unsure about, depending on the report that they got. And that is really to improve their skills for the next exam. That's the reason. It's not a strafmateriaal. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's not a punitive measure.
Yes, it is really to give them time to improve for the next exam. That's the main reason.
Yes, yes. Johan, I think you want to add something there?
No, actually, I didn't. Sorry.
Okay, okay.
No,
All right.
my head wasn't up.
We have another question here that I can possibly answer, even though I'm not a panelist. I'm the facilitator of this webinar. But the question is whether our SATI accreditation exam or system is recognized internationally. For instance, by the International Federation of Translators. Now, it does not really work like this, that you get endorsement from another organization, on an international level. But I am the SATI representative on the International Federation of Translators. So I get a lot of opportunities to speak to people internationally about accreditation, about the, how our system works and so on. And what I can tell our members is that I believe that our system is top-notch, especially since it has been in the making for over 3 decades, and because we are such a multilingual and multicultural society with so many language combinations. The landscape is far less complex in other parts of the world, so they don't have to cope with the variety that we have to cope with. So let us move on. Robin has a question for Wannie. Do you have to retake or renew your accreditation after a certain period? So this is really like you getting your driver's license, and 5 years down the line, you have to go and renew your driver's license.
At this stage, as far as I remember, it's not necessary. We are not going to do the same as a driver's license. But when you go through the first process of getting accredited, we believe you as a professional will keep working on your skills. I think if we get to the level where we have to take down the exams every 5 years, it's going to be very difficult. So the first exam is the most important thing. This is why we have this sort of practice test, test yourself and see what your skills are. Let me give you an example, Eleanor. In my previous job, when I was a professor at Northwest University, I was training text editors in Afrikaans in the honors course. And mostly towards the end of the year, they said they wanted to become an accredited text editor. And I normally said, no. First, you're going back in the field. You're going to work for 5, 6 years. Then you can do the test. If you want to see if you have the skills, nothing prevents you from taking the test. But first, go in the field and do some work. And that field means in a company. You can be freelance, whatever you do, wherever you do. But
okay.
But make certain that you're able to go through the test. And if you pass the test, you stay accredited.
Yeah. Thank you, Wannie. Johan, I'm just going to come to you. I know that you want to add to this. but I think I know where you are going, and I'm going to link this. And I'm bringing this to you because it links well with a question that Greta Albers from SATI is asking us. And we knew we're going to get this question. So I hope I'm right in anticipating what you want to say. The question is, Johan, are you considering making professional development, CPD, compulsory to retain your accreditation? Because I know there are people who feel if you've become accredited 20 years ago, are you still, and you haven't maybe worked in the field for 12 years or so, is your accreditation still valid? So can you respond to that, Johan, please?
Yes, thanks, Eleanor. You read me correctly. That's exactly, I read Greta's question, and that's why I wanted to add that to what Wannie had said. This is something that was very prominent in our negotiations about the SASL interpreting examination, that we would have to bring in continuous professional development. And it was also even more prominent when the legislation was written, and we participated intensively and extensively in the writing of both the Act and the regulations. And the regulations, which actually unpack the Act, make provision for continuous professional development. But it is something that SATI has not started yet, and which I think there's good reason to consider doing. It's not necessary. Somebody else asked the question, to expand on that question, do you need to rewrite the examination every now and then or every 5 years, like your example of the driver's license? The idea is more like other professional bodies where you have to do a certain amount, you have to be involved in a certain amount of professional activity, whether it be workshops, conferences, congresses, as an attendee or as a presenter. That counts for more. There are all various kinds of portfolios of evidence that you can build up in the course of a year that have to be submitted by a certain date in order to maintain your accreditation. That's more or less a system that we had unpacked quite carefully when we discussed the South African Sign Language interpreting exam. And what we have or had in there would be very useful for the other branches of the profession as well.
Okay. Thank you, Johan. Somebody asked, and I can't check the name now because I don't want to scroll up and down, but somebody asked a question when I introduced the webinar earlier on today. I mentioned that our system is not flawless, and Wannie also made mention of it. And this person's asked, so what do you mean? It's such a broad statement. What do you mean with it? What are those problems? And I think one of the things I want to mention is the fact that we're still looking at how best we can introduce CPD, that people can't walk around without accreditation forever and ever and ever, and maybe not even work as a language practitioner and then make a comeback. A second flaw, I think, and we are very honest, is that we do not necessarily cover all the language combinations in all the branches of language practice. We've mentioned that, and I think it was Erika who said it, that editing is only available in Afrikaans and English. And that is still a problem to us. So, and that's what I meant when I said our system is not flawless, that we're not necessarily, able to cope with CPD at the moment, and that we don't, service all language combinations in all branches of language practice.
Eleanor, could I maybe add, one thing is that you continuously develop a system. What we did the past 3-4 years, we worked on our procedures and our processes to make certain we sharpen it so it works a lot better. And it also makes it easier for someone like Erika to do her job if she has a list of rules which we can work from. This is why we would like to ask the people, taking part today, coming forward with suggestions. How can we improve?
Yes.
Really help us to come better.
Yeah.
But this
Yeah.
is a system developed by professionals for professionals.
Exactly. Thank you, Wannie. There's another question by the same person who is anonymous attendee. The person doesn't give his or her name. And maybe, Johan, you can help answering that one. I said at the beginning that we want to protect the public against, the malpractices. And now this person is asking, are we talking about malpractices by freelancers? And I think
Yes.
exactly what we are talking about, or people who are not working with a particular agency or a business. Johan, I'm putting this question to you because you are also the chairperson of SATI's ethics committee. And so we get a lot of complaints or, complaints from members of the public, from SATI members about the quality of work.
Yes. Eleanor, yes, I just scrolled to that particular question as well. So we're reading each other very nicely at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes. Because that's the second part of that participant's question. And perhaps to say the system isn't perfect, just to add to that quickly, is not what we're trying to say. What we're saying is there's room for expansion, and we are always open to improvement, like you said.
Yes.
But then,
yes.
okay, any profession is normally characterized by the fact that it bears the interests of its members of the profession at heart, but that also it bears in mind the interests of the user of that profession. You've got to protect your professionals and you've got to protect your users. And that is what we've built into our code of ethics as well. And we actually need to unpack our code of ethics. There is a set of draft rules in terms of the code that we have drafted some time ago, and that will really help people understand this. But yes, it is, you see, we can only protect people against our members if they act unethically. We don't have a grip on the people out there. The question was, do you mean freelancers? And yes, freelancers who aren't SATI members, we can do nothing about because of the openness.
Exactly.
And that is why we need the Act, which is dead in the water at the moment, to be put into effect by establishing the council so that the council can start its activities, because that's the only way in which we're going to be able to protect the public against a broader range of people and not just the SATI members, because SATI can only protect the public against its members.
Yeah.
Or
Thank you,
abuses
Johan.
by its members. Yeah.
Erika, I've got two very practical questions for you. The first one is, what happens to your accreditation status if you're no longer a member of SATI, or if you fail to pay your SATI membership fees?
You lose your status. Short. So if you can come and really explain why perhaps you lapsed your membership, the accreditation committee will look at each case and we can reinstall your status. But if you decide you don't want to be a member anymore, you cancel then you also lose your accreditation. And it means when you apply again to become a member, you will have to again do the exam.
Yes. Erika, there's a very practical question. For editing, the editing accreditation exam, do you use as the candidate, do you work in track changes? So do you do it electronically, or do you actually have to know the proofreading and editing symbols and do it by hand? Now there, I think, point out how we, manage to keep with the times.
Yeah, up to about 3 years ago, we only had editing on hard copy. But luckily, they didn't have to, know all those signs that Wannie taught them. They say if it's easy for the marker to see what you mean, your notes will be okay. So you need not know all those intricate signs. And then since 3 years ago, we started to give the candidates a choice. Do they want to do it on hard copy or do they want to do it on track changes? So the choice are theirs.
Eleanor, you're muted.
Sorry, because we know that, people don't even, really use the proofreading symbols and editing symbols. If you look at publishing houses and so on. So it's a little bit senseless, to use that kind of system if it's no longer used in the real world. I've got a question, Johan, I'm going to pose it to you. It's from Wannie, who wants to know, how do you accredit people working in the indigenous African languages? Now, the question isn't very specific and very pointed, but I suppose it works exactly the same way, that their exams are marked by people who are already accredited in those languages.
Yes, that's correct.
As I say, it's a widely and a fairly vague question, but maybe you can expand a little bit on it.
Yeah, it is true. We don't have an accreditation exam if we don't have accredited people in the language combination to mark that exam, except where we need to establish a new combination. And I think, Wannie, I think what is important is that we are talking about language combinations, and we do have some language combinations established where we have markers available. If we don't have markers available, then we have to resort to other means of establishing accredited people. And there we can use linguistic specialists working in the particular language. And we have in the past been considering possibly international cooperation if it is an international language for which we don't have provision currently in the SATI system. But perhaps I can tell you how the first round of Afrikaans English accreditation worked. It was a very large group of people who who applied their minds to a possible way of doing an accreditation examination. It was arranged that everybody would submit what they regarded to be suitable questions, source texts, to be translated. And they all looked at the texts, they all met one full Saturday and sat and picked out one general compulsory text and a number of other texts, and they all did 3 translations, and they all sat and assessed each other's work and decided who would make it and who wouldn't. And there were people who didn't make it. And in that way, the first group of accredited people in the Afrikaans to English combination was established, and a group of people in the English to Afrikaans combination. Yes. So that is a way in which one can do it. If one has 5 or 6 people working in a particular African language English combination, for example, then one could have such a round of accreditation. But we have worked around other ways of doing it by using, like I say, language specialists, etc. So, yeah.
Thank you, Johan. It's interesting that Wannie mentions that the language combination that is at stake here is Xitsonga and English. So it helps a little bit. I've got another question here. I just want to mention that, as Erika said, we're not going to deal with questions on sworn translation in this webinar, simply because we are going to have a dedicated webinar. I think it will be somewhere in September, specifically on sworn translation, because it seems to be such an unknown field or branch of language practice, and there are lots of questions around sworn translation. So please, if I ignore your questions about sworn translation, that is the reason why. We want you to tune in on this very dedicated webinar on sworn translation. There's another question again from Greta Albers, and this is a very interesting one. And I'm going to put it to the panel. Whoever puts up their little finger first, I will give the opportunity to answer. Would you recommend being accredited in different fields, such as different language combinations, as well as editing in various languages and so forth? And this links up very well with what Linda Botha said in our previous webinar 3 weeks ago, that there seems to be a need for language practitioners to diversify and to upskill, you know, and to gain more experience in the different areas of language practice. So would any one of you recommend, you know, becoming accredited in more than one field, such as interpreting, sworn translation, editing, and so forth?
Can I pitch in?
Please, you buzzed first.
Seeing that everybody's sitting there waiting to say something. The more arrows you have to your quiver or to your bow, the better, or the more strings you have to your bow, the better chances you have of finding clients if you are in the market working as a freelancer or having a company. I mean, obviously, if you can edit and translate and interpret and you're accredited in all of those, it does help to testify to your ability to work in those fields, and it's more jobs that are opened up for you.
Yes, yes.
It also depends on the skills of the person. Like Johan said, you know, I look at myself, Eleanor, I'm not good at translation. I cannot interpret, but I can do Afrikaans text editing. That is what I can do.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
someone like Johan, he can do everything.
So he's a
And this
jack
is
of
what
all
we say.
trades.
Like I said, if you are able to do more, this is wonderful. But sometimes you just specialize, someone like me.
Yeah. Erika, we are almost reaching the end of our webinar, but there are two related questions that I want to ask you, and they deal with resources. The first one is, are there any resources that you may not use during your accreditation exam?
No, you can use whatever you want, because in practice, when you do a job for a client, then you will be able to use all the resources. So we will recommend that you use everything to get the best result possible.
Okay. Then there's a question that relates to the use of resources. Do we as SATI check that people didn't use tools such as machine translation tools? The example that the person gives is push the whole thing through Google Translate to complete the exam.
No, we don't test, because that's my personal view. If you deliver a job for a client and the client is happy with your result, doesn't matter how you got the result. If you have the ways and the means and the context and the way to get to a perfect translation, why not? But that's my personal opinion. I cannot talk. Yeah.
Johan, you want to add?
Yeah, very briefly, Eleanor, and you will know because you work with students who would have tried it, and Wannie will know, every one of us will know. A Google translation stands out. Now, I don't know to what extent that applies to the European languages. The corpus might have been much more developed in a particular language combination than in the case of Afrikaans and English. And I do use Google Translate for a rough draft. And then I work with that and refine. It's a tool. It's far from perfect, but it also provides a very remarkably accurate translation in some instances. But you've got to be an experienced translator to refine. I've seen that Google Translate omits certain phrases, for example, for some or other reason. You're going to get caught out because
unless you do, Johan, unless your post-editing processes.
That's it.
you know, so you can potentially use Google Translate.
Yeah.
If your post-editing process isn't up to scratch, we will know immediately. So
Well, these are
I'm
all-
going to,
Sorry, these are all tools that you can use. You must use the tools.
yes, yes, but it's about the quality of the end product. I want to
That's
move to a very last question before I just hand over to each one of you, because we are 2 minutes away from the end of the webinar, just to make closing statements. To what extent do we as SATI consider the qualifications of a person, academic qualification, during the application or when the person applies to do the exam? Say a applicant has a PhD in translation studies or in language studies or so on. Does that make any difference? You know, so do we recognize prior learning to be in place? Erika?
Okay, okay.
Erika, can you go over on your dongle?
Prerequisites include must be a SATI member. Okay.
Erika, can you repeat, please, because there was some distortion?
Can you hear me? Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay. When you apply, we've got these prerequisites. You must be a member of SATI. You must have a qualification, and you must have at least 3 years practical experience in the specific field. If you don't have the academic qualification, if you have 5 years of experience in your field, then you will also qualify. And remember, we also get references. When you apply, you give us some references. So we also check on the work that you've done before we allow you to do the exam. So it's not necessarily for an academic qualification, because we will also look at your practical experience.
Of course, when you say...
Sorry, Eleanor, go ahead.
I think we want to say the same thing, Wannie, is when you say academic qualification, it's a relevant academic qualification.
Yes,
not a BSc in chemistry or something in meteorology or whatever. It's got to be a relevant qualification. So this brings us to the end. I'm very, very sorry that we can't get to all of your questions, but I think we managed to cover quite a lot of what you asked. So, Wannie, we're going to do a very last round of 1-2 sentences. What do you take away from this webinar, and what would your last advice be to the people who are tuning in today?
I would like to thank the people for tuning in, and I would like to thank them for sending the questions. The office and Erika will respond to most of the questions, because most of them are technical stuff. But it's important that people are interested in accreditation. It means they are worrying about the quality of the work we are doing. And it's typical of a professional to do good work. And this is like Johan said, it's ethical to do the best you can.
Yeah. And I think what is really relevant is that we're testing you for your professional competence. We are testing you for your potential to become a good translator or a good interpreter. So it's not, we're not trying to identify potential. We want to know that you are able to do the work at a professional level. Erika, your parting shots?
I just want to tell the people, don't be afraid to try. I want to stress it, that we are actually on your side. We would really like you to get accredited. You can count on us. We are available 24/7. You need not be worried about that. Nobody will know if you failed. You can just try again.
Thank you, Erika. And it is true that our standards are high. So it is quite possible that some of the people who are tuning in today actually had a less positive experience of trying one time and are now wondering whether it's worth it to try again. And I think what we want to say is, by all means, yes, yes, yes.
Right.
Try again. Johan, your last words?
Yes,
Not
I'd like to
webinar.
conclude in the webinar. I'm concluding by also referring to something that Julia Pedro has been sharing on the chat. This is our accreditation examination is not a training opportunity. The only extent to which we do use it as a training opportunity is for people who write the practice test, who will get more extensive feedback, and that will assist them in doing better when they write the actual test. And then also, if you fail, you also get extensive feedback. But the idea, and that links up with Julia's question, is the idea is not to have people who don't have the competency to try this test. That's another aspect that is difficult to manage, is to prevent people who do not have the skills to try and write. So yes, don't be afraid to write, but on the other hand, don't come and take a chance if you know that you don't have the skills. Then take the test, the practice test, and work from there. That at least will give you an indication. But we try and do some screening beforehand.
I think the biggest problem that we encounter, Johan, is that people come and write the test too soon. They want to be a practitioner, they want to enter the market, been doing a little bit of work, and okay, they think I'm ready to sit for the exam now. Rather take more time, do better preparation, get experience, and then write the test.
Eleanor, I could just maybe add from text reduction. What we found the best per people to do the work is, this is what we found from the research. People who've got a degree, probably in languages, who worked about 15 to 20 years in the field, and we tried to stay abreast of developments in the field. And 7 out of 10 times it's a lady.
Yeah,
This is
that's
what
the
it says.
typical, that is
mostly
the typical
freelancers.
profile.
Profile.
That's the typical profile.
But
That's the typical profile. All right. I want to, before I thank our panelists, I just want to mention that our website contains detailed information about what we offer, the language combinations, because I saw a question about Kiswahili and so on. We simply don't have time to answer, those kinds of detailed questions. You can please go to our website. It's simply www.translators.org, and you can go and look under the topic accreditation or the title accreditation. You will find a wealth of information there. I also just want to advertise our next webinar. It is not 3 weeks from now. I made a mistake. It's actually 2 weeks from now. So on Wednesday, the 12th of August, always on a Wednesday, always 1 o'clock, we will have Professor Annemarie Bekes as the facilitator. She's also an honorary member of SATI and has been the chairperson of SATI for many years. And the topic is very interesting, I think, for students and for people who work in the publishing industry, but also for translators and editors. And the topic is not writing and submitting your thesis or dissertation in English. Is it worth it? I'm going to repeat it. Not writing and submitting your dissertation or thesis in English. Is it worth it? There may come, there may be a lot of implications if you write your thesis in Sitsonga or in Xhosa or in Zulu for translation and for editing. We've got 3 panelists who will participate. The first one is from the University of Northwest. She is Dr. Eileen Poe, and she wrote her PhD thesis in Setswana. Then we've got Dr. Nompumelelo Kapa, who wrote her dissertation, her doctoral thesis in languages and philosophy in isiXhosa. And we've got George de Bruin, who wrote his master's dissertation in Afrikaans, but he is now doing his PhD in English. So we want to know why, how is it worth it? So please tune in on Wednesday, 12 August. I want to thank everyone who participated in today's webinar. First of all, our panelists, Wannie, Erika, and Johan, thank you very much for your time. I want to thank my colleague in the International Federation of Translators, Sandra Bertolini, who has always been assisting us with technical issues and who will continue to do so for our next few webinars. And then I want to thank the participants for your questions, because you really help us to explore the topic of accreditation and to know what the things are that you are grappling with. So herewith, I end the webinar, and I hope to see all of you on Wednesday, 12 August. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank